Mumta Ito began her career as a high-powered corporate lawyer working in the heart of the city of London, Britain's equivalent to Wall Street. She was advising investment banks, multinational corporations, and governments on large-scale complex transactions. She was very successful until she found herself questioning the human value of her work. During a leave of absence, she experienced a profound spiritual transformation and joined the entourage of Amma, one of India's foremost teachers, healers, and humanitarians. Using her legal training to serve her new spiritual consciousness, she set up a successful environmental organization in the Virgin Islands, which led her to challenge the whole relationship between human law and the laws of nature. She founded the International Centre for Holistic Law in Scotland, and she's now engaged in a European citizens' initiative designed to change the world by embedding the rights of Mother Earth in the legal system of the 28-nation European Union.
In the EU, we've had participatory democracy as a fairly new invention. Started in February 2011 with the European Citizens' Initiative. And what the European Citizens' Initiative allows us to do in Europe is that 7 citizens from 7 member states can propose a law to the European Commission. And provided we raise at least 1 million signatures across at least 7 member states with a de minimis of about 0.01% of the population of at least 7 countries, then the European Commission have to consider passing that law.
Wow. But that's a big task. That's 7 countries and well, I guess several million signatures if you've got to get to that percentage of the population.
That's right. And what makes it really helpful for citizens is that the European Union allows us to collect signatures online. And so we can run it as an online petition campaign, use social media and all of the rest.
And there are 20 other countries, right? And you can also take action in those, but separately or individually.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
We intend to run the initiative for the rights of nature across all 27 countries. And the way we're organizing, we're going to have a central team, and we're also going to have country teams that are going to be actively spreading the message in all of the countries.
Now, what's the initiative? Tell me what it is that you're trying to do with all this.
Okay. Basically, what we're looking to do, it's well known that we are facing unprecedented environmental issues. And in my experience as an environmental lawyer, I can see that the current system of environmental law that we have, which is pretty much based on a paradigm of nature as property, restricts citizens to having to bring cases through the planning and the administrative courts. And so it's very difficult for communities to protect nature per se. So the initiative that we're bringing is following the emerging paradigm that's appearing throughout the world in countries like Ecuador and Bolivia, in municipalities throughout the United States, of recognizing a natural law approach, so recognizing nature's inherent rights to thrive and to flourish. So our European Citizens Initiative is for recognizing and respecting the inherent rights of nature.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would that actually mean in practice? I mean, let's say I'm a citizen of one of the countries in the European Union, and I see some environmental outrage going on, which I'm sure it does, what can I do about it?
Right, so assuming that our initiative was successful and the EU adopted a directive on the rights of nature, what that would mean is that the EU, once they've adopted the directive, it would become applicable in all 27 member states. So there will be a time period within which each member state will have to enact laws that, that give effect to the principles in the directive. So this would enable the ordinary citizen in a European country to invoke the rights of nature. So it would take it outside of the property paradigm. In conjunction with just giving nature rights, of course, we've got to look at mechanisms. And at the moment, the current mechanism of looking at environmental cases is through the planning and administrative courts. And there is also a movement to bring about an international court for the environment. And so, coupled with our initiative, we would also like to build in this mechanism so that citizens have a much more straightforward means of addressing these issues.
Can you think of an example of something which you can't now address, but would at least get its day in court, if this were in place? Right?
Yes. For example, something like fracking. At the moment, communities need to look at the planning laws and need to look at the actual permissions that are given to do extensive environmental assessments and all of these things, and it's very difficult for communities to actually bring a case. Usually you would need to show that your rights are personally affected in some sort of a way. If there were the rights of nature, we'd be able to look at the rights of the ecosystems that would be destroyed by this, as well as the rights of the human beings involved. And if we had a court for the environment, it would give a completely different avenue for which to look at these issues.
Okay, so if I were a citizen, I were trying to take some action on, let's say, the pollution of the local river or something of that kind, if I go now, I have to show that that pollution affects me personally and directly in order to have what they call standing, right?
Yes, exactly. Usually this is the case. And this makes it extremely difficult. Yeah. No.
So, but in this situation, once you have that kind of legislation in place, then it becomes possible for me to go to court and say, it doesn't directly affect me, but it does affect nature, and it does,
yes, part of the mechanism that we look to build in is also to give community the rights to defend the rights of ecosystems and of nature. And at the moment, rights of communities are not really recognized in our legal system per se. Yes, there may be pockets where this exists, but it isn't really a given. And certainly not being able to speak up on behalf of ecosystems and biodiversity that is affected by human action.
And it's in the States, they're taking that as the approach to try and get this kind of change, is to say the community itself seizes that jurisdiction, basically says within our city, within our town, nature has rights, and then the hope is that this becomes a big enough movement that it eventually pushes upward. But you're looking at, in a sense, almost the opposite direction, right? Doing it across this large political structure.
Yes. In the United States, it's my understanding that municipalities are able to create their own ordinances. In European countries, well, in particularly the UK, which is where I'm from, this is not really an avenue that's available to us. If laws were made at the local level, they could be overridden at levels further up. So even if communities got together and they declared that we want to have a charter that recognizes the rights of nature, those rights would not really be upheld in court. So another difficulty that we have with Europe is that the laws of each country are different. So if we had a ground-up movement in Germany, it doesn't mean that it would inspire a similar movement in Spain, because it would be a different legal framework. It's not as if they could just take what's happened in Germany and just apply it to Spain. So by going at the European level, it provides an incredibly efficient mechanism for bringing about change throughout the whole of the European Union, because by proposing a framework directive, we can propose a framework that brings in a legal structure that actually enables sustainability, and if that is adopted, it will have to be legislated for in all of the individual countries. So yeah, so as far as I know, in the United States, they also don't have an efficient participatory democracy that would make a proposal immediately applicable across all states. So this is something quite unique that we have in Europe, which is very exciting for us as citizens to take advantage of.